Okay, so today's session is ideation and testing, but I guess the session, I really hope that I don't just get to present my ideas to you guys or my experiences to you guys, but I also want to hear stories from you as well, and like maybe take some questions at the end on like what you guys are going through. And the things that I'll be covering today I think I can, because there's only like so much time, so I would take like touch and go on some topics, but I will dive deeper with stories on the others that I have. But yeah, I really hope to know you guys a little bit better in this session as well. So yes, I am Samantha. I'm the co-founder of ShopBack. I was the first designer in the team, and it's been 8 years in ShopBack so far. So which also means it's been 8 years in my career in UX. I'm from the sunny island of Singapore. In my free time, I like to read. I consider myself an agile learner, so I like to pick things up. I used to think of myself as kind of like a jack of all trades, right? Because I used to think bad about myself for being a generalist, but now I just find fun in like picking up new things, trying to learn new ideas, like getting along with new skills, things like that. And my dream job, I'm not sure if you guys would relate to this, but my dream job is actually a zookeeper. It has been since I was young. It still is. If I ever have the chance to be a zookeeper again, be a zookeeper in the future, I would be. But it's nowhere near the current job that I have today. I have a dog and a rabbit. My dog's name is Yoda. You can see over here. And my rabbit's name is Minify. Yeah, so I love my pets a lot. So for today's sharing, I've already covered who in the world I am. I will share a little bit more about ShopBack so that you guys know the context and the environment that I designed for. I will go into ideation and testing methods, which is the bulk of the information that you guys are here for. And then towards the end, you can ask me anything. Along the way, if you have any questions that you want to clarify, you can just drop them in the chat. We'll take it towards the end of the session. All right. Okay. Yeah, so for what is ShopBack? Right? So ShopBack is founded in 2014. We are a cashback and rewards platform. We are currently in 19 million users in 9 different markets. Most of the markets that we are in is APAC and Australia. We have grown from 4 all the way now to 500 over employees in the past 8 years. And our platforms are app, web, and extension so far. So the basics of the platform or the company, or how the product works is you come to the platform and you are able to find rewards or cashback that you want to get. You make a click through, we receive some commission from our merchants that are on the platform. And instead of keeping 100% of the commissions to us, we will split most of the commissions back to the users. Yeah, so that's roughly how it is. We have it in online, we have it in offline stores, and today we are also branching out into vouchers as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about the company and the environment that we are building for. I think ideation and testing is really something that is not just locked down inside the design team, right? It is something that we hold very close, even as we were trying to move the business forward. So when ShopBack first started, it was actually a one-day thing. So it's a similar concept. We worked with merchants, but it was only for one day, 24 hours only. And users come in, they get to see like deals from different merchants. They make a purchase and they will get some rewards, like maybe a voucher code or something like that. So that was the first idea that we had. We wanted to test the waters a little bit. But then we thought even further, right? What if we could bring this idea? Why is it only available in 24 hours? Why can't we bring this idea a little bit further to extend it in the period of time? So we then brought it to this thing called a great online sale in Singapore. I think there's a great Singapore sale that is in Singapore. Usually it happens towards the end of the month, but we decided to try in an online mode. So it's similar. Merchants work with us, but instead of one day, now we extend it to a period of like 3 months. What the users would do is they would purchase from these merchants. Once they purchase, they will receive a code. And they enter the code inside this website, they will be able to unlock all the different vouchers, all the different coupons that they can shop further on. And then again, we decided, okay, people are interested, there is a demand, right? People want to get better deals, people want to get better shopping. And so how can we push that idea even further, right? And think of it from an all year round. Like why should cashback or why should deals and discounts be only available in specific periods of time in the year? Why can't we give it to users all year round? So that's where we push this idea further into what we have today, which is cashback. And this idea is not new. I have to say that it has the mature players are in the market in US. I think you guys would know Ebates in the past. I think now they're called Rakuten. And also in China, there is this company called Fanli. Yeah, that is also very big. But there was a gap in APAC, and that's why we decided to move it also in Southeast Asia. So without further ado, I'll dive into ideation. So I'll be going through 4 things and briefly talking about the first 2, just to give you guys an idea of what these methodologies are. And then I will dive through with some stories for the later 2. So for ideation, this is one method that is in the very basic that I use it. I think most of us would use it without knowing that we are actually kind of using this framework. It's called SCAMPER. So it's a very easy thing that you could do, especially if you're the only designer in the team, right? And there are so many other methodologies like Crazy 8 and everything that requires more people. But if you're pressed for time and you're the only designer, this is something that is really good to do. So using an existing product or service, okay, you just simply go through the list of things over here, right? Like substitute, combine, adapt, modify, magnify, put to use, eliminate, and reverse. And then from there, once you have tried exhausted your ideas for each of this section, you can go ahead and review and then pick your best viable solution. From here, I'll just give a little bit of guiding questions on how you can roughly go about doing each of it, but I wouldn't dive too deep into all of it. So the first one for substitute is just really to think about and look at your product and think about what are some things that I can substitute or change in my product or the processes today, right? It's not just fixed to visual design alone. Can I substitute from one part to another? Use this idea for another project. So that's the guiding questions if you're going about doing substitute. For combine, I guess this is quite self-explanatory. Can I merge things together? Look through the user flow to find, is there anything in the user flow that has synergy that I can merge together? What are some elements in your platform that are good today that you want to further amplify that you can bring together and combine together? Adapt. This is something that we do very often in ShopBack. So looking back in the history of whatever that has been done before, or finding inspiration for our current products. Like if somebody else in the design team is doing something that is similar, we will look to that and ask like, oh, what is the context that you're building in? Maybe I could adapt this to my context as well. Or like our entire business model was also kind of like adapted from somewhere else. We saw it in America, we saw it in China, and we decided to bring it into Southeast Asia. So adapt is something that I guess we do, but we don't know that we're doing it today. This is the most common one, modify, magnify, minify. I do joke about it that most of the time it comes in forms of comments from maybe stakeholders, right? Like, can we make this button bigger? Maybe can we change the color rate or things like that, right? But in your real design practice, you have to try those solutions anyway. So I would think about maybe if it's about increasing the affordance of something, I'll think about maybe I could exaggerate this, I could tone down something else. So that's the guiding questions for modify. And then put to another use. What else can this be used for? So I'm not just designing specifically for this context, right? But if I have an existing solution, I'll think whether this could be brought to another place. And for us, we bring this same model of cashback from one country to another, so another market as well. And then eliminate. What can I remove? I think this is something that we have been trying to do so far. So eliminate or simplify product design and services. So ShopBack is not the easiest thing to understand at the start, right? There are so many like terms and conditions that you kind of have to understand for each merchant. So we also do have the trouble of people not reading the special terms and conditions for the merchants. So during this time, we will then think about, could there be something else that we can do to just eliminate most of the things that are that is not necessary to the users and just surface those that are very important so that they have spent less effort digesting the content. So that's one example of eliminate. It doesn't have to be design specific, could be content specific as well. And the last one is rearrange. So like moving things around, changing the components, patterns and layouts, things like that. So that's a brief run through of a solo activity that you could do if you were trying to get your ideas out, and you're feeling a little bit stuck. You could go through the list. Don't force it if you don't have all for each, right? It doesn't matter. It's just really a guiding framework for you to get your ideas out. All right. So that is SCAMPER. So I have a habit of speaking really fast. So if any case I speak too fast for anybody to understand, do let me know. I will slow down. Yeah. Okay, so the next one that we're going to do, which is also my favorite, is a fundamental uh, ideation method, which is a mind map. I think we learned this in schools as well. So I wouldn't dive too deep into how to create a mind map, but mind map really is a visual representation of your train of thought, which I find very beautiful, because sometimes when we are doing design, our ideas would come in a very natural way. We'll think, oh, what if I did this? What if I did that? But I find myself like repeating certain ideas after a while. And I the best way to get it out and to stop repeating the ideas is for me to put it down in a really quick way, which is pen and paper. So this is roughly the concept of like how to do a mind map. You have a central concept, and it starts to branch out into different themes. And from the different themes, you branch out even further into different keywords. There is no hard and fast rule of how to do a mind map correctly. It is really just a visual representation of your ideas, that everything that you have been thinking about in your head, right? And you could possibly use this for more than just design or UI, right? Just helping you to put down in thought really quickly the things that you have. And what I find most beautiful about mind maps is at the end of the day, once you branch further and further, you start to pair up things that are far from what you originally thought. And that's where true creativity is, right? You think further than what you already know. So as it branches out, it's kind of like a visual representation of your ideas going wider and wider as well. Yeah, so for the next one is for pair design. I'm going really quickly here. For pair design, this is something that we do in ShopBack a lot. And I really, really love pair design. I'll tell you why later. So pair design or group design, how many people you want to involve doesn't really matter. So it's the practice of getting people together, like designers together, to solve a problem. It's having a partner along to solve a problem. So how it goes is really you pick somebody else, someone that you trust, you frame the problem for them, you time box some explorations, you present and share the ideas, and then you pick the ideas from there. So roughly this is the breakdown of how things would usually go. This is how we do it in ShopBack. So this was one of the use case where we were trying to ideate on this thing called rewards and challenges. And what the users have to do was to go through a series of actions in order for them to complete and get a reward. So that was one of the problems that we were trying to surface, like how do we surface micro actions between like things that are yet to be done versus things that are already done. And we got together a few designers, like 3 of us, and it was hosted by our designer called An in Vietnam. So this was entirely remote. So how it's done is she started to put in some ideas of like what it could be, some references that she think we could look at, and then she also provides the context of what she's trying to achieve. From there, she took a step further to think about what are some elements that are already existing and what are some problems, what are some solutions that she has already tried. So that at least we know that this is something that is already considered. We should go from this way forward, and also the elements that we could use to design and try out the solutions with. So from there, each of us took the things that she gave, and for 10 minutes we were there ideating on trying to solve the problem individually. So nobody is supposed to look at each other's concepts yet. And towards the end of it, then we would go through each person to just share about what the ideas that they have. And if you are the one that's facilitating this entire thing, right, you're going to be like, oh, no, there's so many ideas. Which one do I pick? Or what if I offend somebody if I don't pick their idea, right? But the entire purpose of the exercise is not so much that to give you a limelight to show that I'm the best designer in the team, right? But it's really to help to find synergy between the ideas. So she picked out things that she liked or things that could work. And at the end of the day, she put it into the solution, and it really helped her to do it in a really fast period of time, and to think beyond what she already knows. And yeah, this is why I really love, as I was saying, this is something that we try to practice more in our company today and our team today. The first of all, like why I love it is that it facilitates connection. So Anne is in Vietnam. I haven't actually seen her in person before. And most of the time, if you are in a company where you are solely focusing on just say one particular thing, right? Like even if it's a small team, right? Most of the time, your work will be divided by different designers. So this kind of thing really helps to facilitate the connection between one another. I get to know how each designer thinks. It also helps to increase the design consistency. So if I see the way like some other designer is designing for, or if I understand the environment at which they are designing for, I would also pick up some of the consistency, styling, or the way that they are designing things, and it can also help my own design at the end of the day. And for juniors, this is especially good if you're new to the company and you're trying to understand how each designer thinks and how they operate. What's the teamwork like? You could do this so that you can receive a little bit of tips and coaching as well. So what happens during this is we also invite junior designers to come along. They would look and see and just watch how other designers think and how we operate. And from there, they will learn and pick up some things or some skills, right, from there. And the last two is really about just exploring a different space. As I mentioned, sometimes we get too caught up in our own scope of work, right? And we get a little bit bored about the same problem that we are trying to solve again and again. So this is a good time break for us to just look into somebody else's field and think about, oh, what are the possible things? And sometimes creativity is there when you're not the direct person designing for it, right? So if you're not the direct person, you know that, okay, at the end of the day, I'm not the one that's going to take this work to implement it. Then your mind is a little bit more like set free from the constraints. So I really do love pair design or group design. It has really helped me to reduce the ego that I have as a designer, right? To be less guarded about, oh, I design better than you, but really to bring that uniform team spirit into design as well. Yeah, so the next one that I'll go through, this is another method that we use very much in ShopBack as well. So it's Crazy 8. I don't think this is new to the industry. If you have done design sprints before, this would be definitely familiar to you. It's a fast sketching exercise. So how it goes down is you would have some pre-workshop preparation. You set the context, and then you give some time for people to just do some silent sketching, and then at the end you share and vote. Just the rough breakdown. So I'm surfacing these things, and I hope that there are so many resources that are online that you guys can go and search up. So if any of these ideas are you want to learn a little bit more, do feel free to go online and search up for the resources for that. Yeah, Google has a really good book on the design sprint as well, so you could go read up on that. How we do it in ShopBack is a little bit like slightly different. So in pre-preparation is common. So we would try to recruit participants that are of different roles to avoid bias. Sometimes you could find, or I would find that if, let's say, I only ask a group of project managers to be inside, or I ask a group of commercial folks, right? The results that you're going to get is very, very different because they are so saturated within their own roles. And it's very hard for them to reduce the bias. Even for us designers, if we are together in a group doing ideation, it's very different from if we merge other people within. It's just there's subconscious bias going on, and we don't know. So we would try to recruit participants of different roles to avoid the bias, and it can also help us to think in ways that we haven't before. Prepare the boards and tools if you're doing it in person. Prepare paper, pen, post-it notes. And if you're doing it remote, set up your Miro board, set up your Figma or FigJam to do it, and prepare dot voting stickers as well. This is something that we do a little bit different, or at least I would like to think so. So some of the problems might not be exactly like smaller. It depends on the scope of the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Sometimes the problem could be as close to production as like increasing the affordance of something, right? Versus like, oh, we're trying to increase engagement in this page, right? So the scope of the problem it depends on the scope of the problem, how much context you need. But for ShopBack, this is how we do it. Before we start the workshop, we would give all the data that we know and all the synthesized findings or insights. And before the workshop, this is pre-preparation. You would go and look through and read through all the information. digest it. And during the workshop, we would have at the start some places for you to ask questions to clarify what are the insights that you already have from there. I find this to be very helpful because everybody would start on like sort of the same frame of mind because they have read the notes and they have digested the insights, and you could just really head on focus on like scoping out like what is to be done, what the constraints are, things like that. So this is what we do. The next one is we also do references and ideas. You can already see a pattern in there. We try to find references. We take 10 minutes to find references and ideas that already exist in different platforms. Or like it could be even a physical idea. Like we saw, I don't know, like if you go to a furniture shop and you saw something that sparks your idea, you could also bring it in. We have had people who gave books as well. Like they gave screenshots of content or books from the ideas that they got as well. And that's really just to surface up things that we could find potential in, to spark some sort of innovation from there. And then we will take these ideas and references and then to the next part, which is where the bulk of what Crazy 8 is, right? Which is silent sketching. So 1 minute each idea. So you're supposed to exhaust the easiest ideas first. Something that my school teacher used to teach me is every time you have a mental block, chances are it's because you are not putting down the information that you already know. So it's still floating around in your head. And if you want to break through that, the easiest way is to just exhaust it and write it down and draw it out, right? To get it out of the system so that you can focus on something else and move the idea even further. So silent sketching is really fast. 8 minutes to me, I think it's a little bit quick. But the idea of it is to just like give brief and fast ideas. If you need to extend it to 2 minutes each, it's also fine. It's really up to your own coordination. Yeah. And then from there, we would share, vote, and prioritize. There are so many different ways that you could prioritize the things that has already been there. At the end of the day, you want to derive at a possible backlog, right? Backlog of possible solutions that you could try and test. Yeah, so prioritization is equally as important as well. If not, you are just going to end up with like a pile of ideas and there's no action towards it. So I think this is important. If there's any PMs here today, you guys will be the ones that know this the best, I guess. Yeah. So with that, I would give you guys some ideation tips, right? The first one this is my advice, so please take it with a pinch of salt. Do also share with me any other advices that you guys have for ideation as well. My advice would be to figure out the problem space first. Like that's what I usually do. If you are a startup and speed is something that you really need, right? Then I would try to figure out whether the product or the thing that I'm trying to solve for, if I'm a market follower versus a first mover. So a market follower is like, for example, that there are many, it's quite mature, like there are ideas that already exist in the market or existing solutions that are great in the industry already. But first mover could be something that is very unique to you or unique to the problem space that you're having today. Or you might not be the first one to ever design something like that, but you could find yourself in a space where there is not many good examples out there. So that I would still consider as a first mover. So while figuring out whether you're a market follower or first mover, it can actually help you to also understand what's the appetite for innovation, right? Because and then this is how I would think about it. So let's be real, you don't always have a luxury of time, especially if you're trying to just try like the market's acceptance of your idea. This is how I would think about it. If it's a common problem, as I mentioned, you're not a market leader in it, right? And you have some time, I would think about doing pair design. If it's a unique problem that I need to branch out and be a little bit more innovative about the solution, I would try Crazy 8s just to get a unique solution from there. But if you're really tight on time, then those two that I first mentioned, like SCAMPER, as well as mind map, could really help you to just get ideas quickly, especially if you're the only designer in the team. Yeah. My advice for ideation is to go wide and go crazy. So start with the ideas that you already know, as I mentioned. One thing that I keep in mind when I'm doing ideation is that nothing is cast in stone during this phase. So I don't have to worry about my ideas being bad. And I withhold my logic for a little while. Because at this point in time, you just want to exhaust all the different ideas that you have, right? And at the end of the day, even if the ideas they are non-viable or they are not things that are practical to implement now, it adds to your rationalization. So ideation is really about covering all grounds first, right? And then start thinking beyond what you currently know today. Yeah, so that's my advice for it. I'm going to take a break from speaking a little bit and give you a little bit of fun exercise over here from a video that I found. You can try to spot some methods that they are using in a comedic way. I probably won't play the entire thing, but yeah, it was
Need some ideas. We got crushed last quarter. We have to change something.
How about a focus group?
Not now, Todd. We need real ideas.
We're spending too much
Money.
We need to spend less
Money.
Can we get a visual for that?
Okay, so right now we're spending this much money. What if we start spending this much money?
What if we spent less money and only one line through it?
You cut out a whole line.
Manufacturing line.
That's brilliant. No manufacturing.
No manufacturing.
We won't make any of the furniture. We'll let them make the furniture.
Yes, DIY.
Oh, people love DIY. Pinterest. Wait, hold on. No, because we're gonna have to give them tools.
One tool.
But we make it cheaper.
An Allen wrench.
One Allen wrench puts together all the furniture.
People will hate it, but we will love it.
And because they're gonna assemble it, we can pack it smaller. Little boxes, big warehouse. All you need. Yes. Oh, wait. But when they show up to the warehouse, they won't know which box to get.
Showroom.
Yes, the whole place is just a showroom.
At my last job, we would
Shut up, Todd.
Todd, please. This one Halloween, I went through a corn maze.
Corn maze.
So I was in the corn maze and I was like, wow, if there was just a bedroom here, I'd really buy everything in the bedroom.
We make a corn maze.
We make a corn maze.
But instead of corn, it's products. Yes! We have a start and we have a finish. So they go through, and if they want to buy curtains, they first have to pass through
the kitchen.
The kitchen.
But before the kitchen, the bedroom.
The bedroom.
And before the bedroom,
The throw pillows.
the throw pillows.
Yes!
Yes!
Yeah, you can go and look up the actual video. It's 5 minutes long, so I wouldn't get you guys to do it. But I hope you guys picked up some of the concepts that they were using. I don't know if you guys got it, but it's actually about IKEA or IKEA, if you would call it. Yeah, go look up. They're really funny. What are some of the things that you have spot? What are some of the ideation methods that you have spot from what they are using? Maybe if you can comment in the chat. Let's see if you guys got a little bit of what they are getting today. I want to see. Anyone? What are some of the ideas that they use? In a really comedic way. Yeah, it is like a verbal mind mapping in a very chaotic way. They also did some things like reduce, right? They were using SCAMPER a little bit, like there was reducing as well. Or they were talking about one, and then they removed it, and now suddenly you just need a Allen wrench to assemble everything. Yeah, so that was something like that. So about reducing the entire production line and just getting people to assemble their own furnitures as well. So that's also another example of reducing.
Need some idea.
Now you guys left the video. Okay, we will move on to testing. So how do you then test your ideas? You have all these great ideas that you have now had from the ideation that you did, right? So how do you test it? And there are again 4 things that I would share about, but most of the first 2, I would not dive too deep into it, but I would try to share some stories along the way. So why do we test, right? This is a little bit blur between the lines of testing and research. I do consider them a little bit similar or a subset of one or the other. So we test or we research really to either it's to learn, to build, or to measure. So for each of these different goals that you have, right, the methodologies that you use would be very different. So for learning, you do things like, for example, user interview, field studies, theory studies, things like that. If you are testing to build, then you do usability test, card sorting, support tickets, things like that. And then measure is just your A/B testing, etc. So I'll be surfacing 4 things as well. I also try to share some stories about the time when we were still a startup, and if we have little resources, what is it going to be like? And yeah, again, this is my own take on like when I decide to use which. These are the 4 things that I'll be sharing today: usability testing, unmoderated usability tests, guerrilla testing, and fake door experiments. I would really think about what the level of certainty is when I'm doing the test. Is this an idea that the team is really quite confident about already? Then that would help me to decide what's the methodology that I'm using as well. All right. So the first one is guerrilla testing. So guerrilla testing is really going out. I'm not sure in Singapore there's quite a few of these surveyors in the street. I guess in COVID you can't do it anymore. I'm not sure in America you have also like people holding a clipboard and they're trying to come up to you and ask for questions and do a survey. So it's a little bit like that, but except you prepare your prototype and your interview testing materials first. So it could also be that, for example, you're going to launch a restaurant waiting app, and you go down and you don't have users, right? So how do you then find people to do interview? You go down to a restaurant and you just wait for people who look like they want to order food, and you just let them try out your product. So that could be one of the ways as well that you do guerrilla testing. Roughly how it is you prepare the interview materials, you find a location, approach people, and then conduct the interview from there. We use this a lot at the start in ShopBack. So at that time, we were 10 men, 20 people team, and we didn't have a lot of money to do user research and to really invest in paying our user, incentivizing them to come down, right? So we were fortunate enough. We called it Macdonald or Starbucks testing because it seems to be the place that we go to that seldom kick us out. Yeah, so we always go there and ask like people, and they don't seem to be bothered by us doing those things. So we call it Macdonald and Starbucks testing. So we were very fortunate, I would say, because e-commerce at that time was something that was already common to many people. So it was not hard for them to understand the context of our platform. We're also very fortunate to have generic audience as well. So because our product is e-com, and also we have different categories from like mom and baby to men, women, anybody at all, right? Like travel. We also kind of have a generic audience, so we're fortunate on that. And since our products were new, it was also everyone was considered a new user, and we were trying to get feedback from a new user's perspective as well. So how it really was is I would prepare a prototype, make sure everything was okay. We will have a list of short questions. Do keep in mind that because you're approaching people, right, you don't want to keep it to like an hour long, 30 minutes long kind of like sharing session. It's got to be quick because people don't want to be bothered. They're trying to go about their day to day. Then how we will approach the person that looks the most free, like they're not doing anything in particular. We'll approach them. We try to introduce ourselves and say, this is a product that we're trying to launch. Would you mind helping us to test and give us your feedback on it? And it was quite surprising to know that most people were very willing to do it. I'm not sure why. It was like people are very willing to share their opinions, especially if you are seeking their help. So that was, I guess we were very fortunate that we seldom got rejected when we were doing testing in the guerrilla style, remote style like that. Yeah, so that's a little bit of, this is me in the past. And this was like one of the users that we were testing. The next one is fake door experiment. So a fake door experiment is you would build a minimum viable product and find ways to implement at very, very low cost. It could be just maybe if you have a website, it could be as simple as just a banner on the website or something that is a mock, right? And real users will get to interact with it, but when they click through, it lands on something else, right? And the purpose of fake door experiments is really just to validate the market's acceptance of a feature most of the time. But we don't know whether users would want to use this product or not. We don't know whether they will be interested in such content or not. So we would use this fake door experiment paired together with a survey to help us to understand before we invest in things to build. So how it works is you design the feature, you craft the survey, you launch the test and consolidate the findings. Yeah, so we did this a little bit unorthodox method of what I consider a guerrilla fake door testing. So at the start of ShopBack, we realized that giving money away could be something that is very hard for people to accept. People might be skeptical about it. So what happened was the co-founders, they went to the streets to start handing out dollar notes to people on the street, right? So they would hand like $5, $10, and really just free money without like anything at all, no questions asked. But what they found was that people were very, very skeptical about receiving money. I'm sure you would too, right? Like somebody giving money and you're just taking it. That people are mostly afraid whether this is a scam, whether you're into sign something else, right? It's like a marketing strategy that you're gonna get me locked down with. So people were skeptical about it, and that was something that we remembered. And we also understood that because cashback could seem like something that's too good to be true, it's very hard for people to just accept once they see, even no matter how hard you try to tell them that it is as simple as a click through, people will still not believe that this is something that is good, right? So once we understood that mindset, it really helped us to design better in the future. And we started to think about solutions to gain trust from our users, what it means to gain trust, right? What it means to be upfront about the things that we are doing, engage with our users in a way that is personal so that they know that we're not just an organization at the back trying to scam them. Yeah, so this is not our co-founder. This is a reenactment of the thing that we tried to do again. We tried it again, but for a marketing purpose another time. Yeah. So unmoderated usability testing is also another thing that you could do. I personally use Maze quite a bit. So it's really similar to testing in person, but instead of it being you are the one that's conducting the interview, you have a list of questions plus a prototype and tasks that users have to go through. And you could be done in your own pace as well. This is really quick. It depends on whether you are buying users from the platforms or you are sending the links out. It could be both. But I found this to be very good because you could do things concurrently. Like you don't need to spend 1 hour sitting there to talk to the user and get the feedback from there. What's not so good is that sometimes unmoderated testing, people are not, they don't share as much because it's similar to like a survey or on your phone and you're trying to type out all the comments, right? You probably wouldn't give much detail. So I would think that this is more suited for if you are trying to test for usability, like really, is the affordance clear? Is the user flow clear? Are there any errors? Things like that. And the last one is usability testing. So this is something that is common to the industry. I guess if you are a UX designer, you have to do it. Funny story is I remember when my head of design asked me about like what do I not like to do most in my job, because I'm actually an introvert, if you can't tell, right? I put up a very good act of not being an introvert. So I remember I told him I don't like to do usability testing because I have to speak to strangers all the time and I don't like that. But then he was just telling me that I'm sorry, this is really part of your job. Like it is your day to day and you have to do it. So I was like, oh no, okay. But I have pulled through. I will share with you guys some tips if you're an introvert too in the later part. So how usability testing goes, do go and search it out. There are many different ways that you could possibly conduct or frame questions, things like that. You define the goals, you prepare a set of questions, recruit users, conduct the interviews, and then consolidate the findings. Some things that I would share a little bit about how differently we do it in ShopBack today. So for questions and note taking, I wouldn't dive too deep into how to craft the questions and all that. There are so many different ways that you could. So how we do it in ShopBack is we have an overview of the questions. So it's a Google Sheet, and within this Google Sheet is a consolidated way for both the interviewer and the interviewer and the note taker to be aligned on the questions that is asked. And what we found most helpful is that while the interviewer is asking the questions, the note taker can understand the context at which it is asked. And you could also compare across the different users over here, right? So if I have a particular context that I want to understand, then I would look through the list to see are there similar patterns from there as well. So this is what we do. It's very easy to compile themes after that. We also have observer boards as well. So observer boards encourage a non-biased perspective. It also helps to make sure that ethically, like nothing is going wrong within the interview. There's another person in the interview. But it really helps with a non-biased perspective. Sometimes if you are, especially for me, when I was a junior designer, every time I tried to test something, I would be a little bit biased to what I'm trying to test, right? Because you really want it to work. Yeah, and it really helps to just bring somebody in to take a look at what was said and to share with you the key insights and observations from there. In our meeting, we also have a debrief session. So after every interview session, there will be a quick debrief session just to align. So there are different ways that you could iterate the feature while during testing phase, right? One of it is that you would test maybe interview maybe one or two users and then iterate one or two users, iterate from there. But it could also be that you consolidate all the interviews and then you just find, at the end of the day, consolidate the findings and make the iterations from there. But this debrief sessions, what I found to be most helpful is especially if you are doing something that's of quick iteration, this can actually help you to surface things that are preliminary that you might, maybe it's just as small as a spelling error or as small as a broken link, right? And these things, or a 15 minutes debrief session can help you to align. It could also help for things like if you are trying, or if one of the questions were not articulated clearly enough, or you could see that users were struggling with a particular question that you frame, it's also a good time for you to surface it and tweak the way you're asking the question, so that it will not affect the rest of the interviews that you have from there. So the rules of thumb for user interviews and user research is build rapport. So trust is your overarching objectives. You're not there to conduct a survey. You're not there to just go through a list of questions to make sure people answer them. You're really there to hear and dig out the qualitative findings, right? Dig out what they're really trying to say, what they're really trying to do at the end of the day. So let the users do the talking, allow for awkward pauses. In our own design team, we practice this like 30 seconds pause whenever we have something that somebody throws a question, we will wait for 30 seconds before we move on to the next topic. It could be really excruciating, like awkward, but you just have to bear it a little while more so that users get to say what they want to say. Remain neutral while demonstrating empathy. That is something that I mentioned, right? That if you're the designer for it, what I found to be helpful is especially for conducting internal interviews. Sometimes if you are the designer conducting, people know that you're the designer, right? Or they think that you are. One of the tips that my head of research was sharing with me was when you go into the sessions, you could just say that, I'm not the actual designer for this. I'm actually helping someone else to do the interview. So you could be as honest as you want in the interview. Yeah, so that they would lower their guard down and like, this design doesn't work and things like that. Active listening and mind the gap as well, and guide the users through the task with clear and natural instructions. Yeah. So these are my final notes for both ideation and testing. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me so far. Before I share this, maybe I'll just show you guys this video. I'm sure you guys would have watched this before.
Guess which spot that goes in?
The square.
That's right. It goes in the square hole.
Yes. Okay.
And how about this rectangle? That one?
Also the square.
It goes in there too.
Yeah.
Up next, we've got this thin rectangle.
The thin rectangle.
You guess where that goes?
The thin rectangle.
That's right. It goes in the square hole. And up next, a cylinder.
The circle.
I think that goes in
the circle.
The square hole. Now, we've also got this semicircle right here. Do you see a slot that would fit
the semicircle?
Semicircle?
The semicircle.
That's right. It's the square hole. Okay. Up next, the triangle. We know what hole that goes into,
triangle.
Right?
Triangle.
That's right. The square hole. And up next, we have the arch.
The arch. The arch.
You guessed it.
The arch.
It goes in the square hole.
Yeah, so if you're going to do user testing, the first thing that I learned, and it was a very tough lesson, is that you have to be comfortable with being wrong. You are going to get it wrong a lot of times. And I've seen this happen quite a few times where people try to do testing just to prove something, to prove an argument. That's not what you really want, right? What you really want is to uncover the wrong things, the things that you are doing not so good. And it's really those things that can help you, right? Why only test when you know that the thing is already so good and it's going to work? Then there is no point in testing it. So do remember that if you're ever going to bring your product out there to test, you know that there are bound to be times where you're going to get it wrong. So stay open, be curious about what the users are going to say. That's my first advice. And the second advice that I have is, as I mentioned, I'm a introvert, so it's a lot more about listening than it is about speaking. So during my early years of conducting interview, I would be very nervous, right? And I would just make sure that I hit all the questions. I would just go through one by one, and I would say, my bad habit was usually, oh, okay, now on to the next question, or okay, the next question is something like that. So it feels very like a robot, like you're just trying to get the questions out of them. Because that was my way of coping, because I don't know how to converse. But what I realized is that it's really a lot more about listening. Give users time to explain what they're trying to say. And it's only through like good listening that you are able to pick up on things that is not even in the survey, it's not even the questions list that you want to ask. But from there, you are able to then lead the conversation in a way that is that digs out more qualitative findings from there. So this is my tip if you're an introvert. Listen, ask questions. Once you listen, you will definitely have more questions to ask and follow up from there. The last one that I'll leave with you guys is to be genuine and to converse. We are not good actors. I am not a good actor. So there's no way for me to fake that I am feeling equally as pain as the user, that they're going through this. There's no way unless you are really genuine about it. And it tells from your body language. It tells from the way you ask questions, the way you speak. So what I have found most useful is while I engage with users, I would try to really be genuine about the problems that they're going through. And as I'm designing for a space that is e-commerce, sometimes it's very hard to remember there is value in it, that people are actually using your product in a way that is meaningful to their lives. So I would share with you two stories, right? One of it is that as I was speaking to the user, she's actually a mom. And I think one of the questions that we asked to her was, why would she continuously purchase from this merchant, even though it had like very, very little cashback? It was like to the cents. Right, there was not much cashback, but she kept going back to this merchant. And what she was sharing with me was that during the end of the year, during Christmas, she loves to buy gifts for her children. And they were not doing financially good. So it was during these seasons where there is like bigger sales, even though there is like very little cashback for that merchant, she would still continuously go back to purchase, right, just to make sure that her kids would get the gifts, even though it's at a discounted rate. Right? And the fact that she was sharing that the fact that the money could be cashed out into her bank account, it was something that was very useful to her, that it was not just something like the money is locked up somewhere that it can't take it out. So financially, it helped her a lot. And then the second user that I met she was sharing, the question that we asked her was, why would she purchase from a grocery merchant? Not in the exact question, that's a terrible question to ask. But why did she continuously purchase from a grocery merchant that was doing grocery delivery? Because in Singapore, it's really small. Your grocery shops are like, you could easily walk downstairs to get groceries, or take a bus ride 15 minutes to find your local supermarkets. So we were asking her why she was doing that, and she was sharing that she has an elderly at home, and the elderly was immobile. So this was one of the things that really helped her. So she continuously went back, even though again the cashback was very little. She continuously did that because that was what the situation that she had. And all these stories of the users really made me remember that at the end of the day, as we are designing screens, as I'm designing UI, sometimes it's very hard to remember that these are actual people with stories that are using them. And when I turn on the conversation mode and to be genuine with them, I remember their stories, and it helps me later on to design better as well. So yeah, with that, I have ended my session. Thanks for sticking around and listening to what I have to share. I hope some of these things are useful. I'm sorry I had to cover quite a bit in a short span of time. You can follow me on design at ShopBack. At design.shopback. Our Instagram is there. I also have my own private Instagram account. I do mentorship at ADP List, so if you want to hear more stories and go in depth, do feel free to book a slot. And if you're in a startup and you want to learn about startup journey in APAC especially, you can read my Medium article.
Hey everyone, on behalf of IterateUX, we would like to thank you so much for watching this week's event. If you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. We'll have events every Thursday at 5:30 Pacific Time. Join our Discord in the description to find out more.